The abandoned hospital on the outskirts of Seoul stood as a relic of a bygone era, its once white walls now stained with the grime of neglect and the passage of time. The urban explorer, known only as June, had heard the rumors, whispers of the hospital's dark past, of patients who never left, of unexplained phenomena that defied logic. But June was a skeptic, drawn to the place not by belief in the supernatural, but by the allure of the unknown and the thrill of exploration. The air inside was thick with dust, each breath a reminder of the building's abandonment. The only light came from June's flashlight, casting long shadows that seemed to move just out of sight. The initial excitement began to wane as the silence of the empty halls pressed in, replaced by a growing unease. Then, the whispers started. At first, they were so faint June thought it might be the wind, or perhaps the creaking of the old structure. But as they grew clearer, the words indistinguishable yet undeniably human, June's heart began to race. The whispers seemed to come from every direction, echoing through the corridors as if carried by unseen mouths. The sense of being watched was overwhelming, a primal fear that rooted June to the spot. The flashlight's beam flickered, casting the hallway into brief darkness before returning, weaker now. June's hands trembled, the rational explanation slipping away as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The decision to leave came suddenly, a survival instinct kicking in. But as June turned to retrace their steps, the flashlight died, plunging the hallway into absolute darkness. The whispers reached a crescendo, a cacophony of voices that seemed to surround June, pressing in from all sides. In that moment, the line between reality and the unexplainable blurred. June ran, the sound of their own footsteps drowned out by the whispers, the exit seemingly further away with each passing second. The experience left June with more questions than answers, the memory of the whispers lingering long after leaving the hospital behind. The encounter defied explanation, a terrifying reminder of the mysteries that lurk in the forgotten corners of the world. The hospital still stands, its corridors silent once more, but those who dare to enter may find themselves not as alone as they think. Break time equals fives. Greater than the air in Busan was thick with a scent of salt and decay as I stepped onto the cracked concrete of the abandoned school's courtyard. My name is Ji-hoon, a photographer with a penchant for capturing the beauty in desolation. This school, a relic of the past, was my latest project. Its walls, once vibrant with the laughter of children, now stood as a mute testament to time's relentless march. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch towards me like grasping fingers. I adjusted my camera, the weight familiar in my hands, and began my work. The classrooms were frozen in time, desks covered in a thick layer of dust, textbooks left open as if waiting for students who would never return. It was in one of these classrooms that I felt it, a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. My breath fogged in front of me, though the temperature hadn't dropped. I shrugged it off, attributing it to my overactive imagination and focus on framing a shot of the decaying chalkboard. The click of the shutter echoed unnaturally loud in the silence. It wasn't until I reviewed the photo later that I saw it, a shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room, its form indistinct but undeniably present. My heart pounded as I realized I had been alone in that room. The figure hadn't been there when I took the photo, yet there it was, captured forever in digital memory. I returned to the school the next day, driven by a mix of professional curiosity and personal dread. The atmosphere was heavier, the silence more oppressive. Whispers seemed to dance just at the edge of hearing, words I couldn't quite make out. I found myself in the same classroom, the air colder than before. I took more photos, my hands trembling slightly. Each click of the shutter was a challenge to the unseen, a defiance of the fear creeping up my spine. When I reviewed these new photos, the figure was in every one, Closer now, its features still blurred but its intent palpable. The whispers grew louder, coalescing into a single word, my name. I fled then, the sound of my own name chasing me through the empty corridors. I told myself it was the wind, a trick of the acoustics in the old building. But deep down, I knew. The school was not as empty as it seemed. The photos were never published. I couldn't bring myself to delete them, yet looking at them filled me with a deep, unshakable unease. The figure's presence in each image was a mystery I couldn't solve, a story I couldn't tell. The school still stands, its corridors silent once more. But sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I hear the whispers again, calling my name, urging me to return. And though I resist, a part of me wonders, what if I had stayed? What if I had answered? Break time equals fives, greater than the script begins with a group of 4 friends, Minjun, Soo-ah, Jae-yun, and Hye-jin, deciding to explore an abandoned subway station in Seoul, known for its eerie atmosphere and urban legends. The station, closed since the 1980s due to unexplained accidents, is a popular spot for thrill seekers. The friends, armed with flashlights and cameras, are initially excited, joking about the ghost they might encounter. The environment is damp, with peeling posters and rusted rails, the air thick with a scent of mildew and decay. As they delve deeper, their laughter fades, replaced by an uneasy silence. The first sign of something amiss is the temperature drop, their breaths visible in the cold air despite the warm night outside. Then, the whispers start, indistinct at first, like distant conversations, growing louder as if someone is just out of sight. The friends huddle closer, their flashlights flickering unnaturally. The climax occurs when the ground begins to vibrate, and the unmistakable sound of a train horn echoes through the tunnels, followed by the screech of metal on metal. Panic sets in as they realize the tracks have been inactive for over 30 years. They run, but the corridors seem to shift, leading them in circles. The script ends with the friends finding themselves back at the entrance, the station silent once more, but their cameras reveal blurred figures in the photos, and their recordings capture whispers pleading for help. They leave in stunned silence, the experience leaving them questioning reality. The footage and photos mysteriously deleted the next day, leaving no proof but their shared terror. Break time equals fives, greater than the air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay as Dr. Yoon Jin stepped into the long-abandoned psychiatric ward on the outskirts of Seoul. The building, a relic of the 1970s, stood as a grim monument to Korea's often overlooked history of mental health care. Yoon Jin, a historian specializing in medical institutions, had come to document its history before the wrecking balls arrived. Her flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing peeling wallpaper and rusted bed frames. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the old structure settling. Despite her academic detachment, a shiver ran down her spine. It wasn't just the cold, it was the feeling of being watched. As she moved deeper into the ward, her breath visible in the chill air, she noticed something strange, specific spots where the temperature dropped suddenly, unnaturally. Her skin prickled with goosebumps, and her heart raced. Then, faint but unmistakable, the sound of crying. It was soft, a whisper on the edge of hearing, but it filled her with a dread she couldn't explain. Her rational mind struggled to find an explanation, drafts, perhaps, or the wind through broken windows. But the crying. That was harder to dismiss. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a chorus of sorrow that grew louder the further she ventured. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with her recorder, desperate to capture evidence of what she was experiencing. The crying crescendoed, now accompanied by whispers, words she couldn't quite make out but felt were meant for her. Panic set in. Her chest tightened, her vision blurred. She had to get out. Turning on her heel, she ran, the whispers chasing her, the cold spots like hands trying to grasp her. She burst through the front doors, gasping for air, the daylight a stark contrast to the darkness she'd fled. Back in her hotel room, the recordings were blank. No crying, no whispers. Just static. But the cold spots. Those lingered in her memory, as did the feeling that something in that ward had wanted her to stay. The experience left her questioning not just the history she sought to document, but the very nature of the unexplained. The ward was demolished a month later, its secrets buried under rubble. But sometimes, in the quiet of the night, Yoon-jin swears she can still hear the whispers, calling her back to the forgotten corridors. Break time equals fives. Greater than the air inside the abandoned factory was thick with the scent of rust and decay, a palpable reminder of the years it had stood silent in the heart of Incheon. The artist, Ji-hyun, had come here seeking inspiration, drawn by the eerie beauty of decay and the stories these walls might whisper if one listened closely enough. Her footsteps echoed ominously through the hollow corridors, each step a testament to her solitude, or so she thought. The flickering light from her flashlight cast long shadows that seemed to move just beyond her vision, playing tricks on her mind. Yesterday, the factory had been a canvas of peeling paint and broken machinery, but today, something was different. Freshly drawn symbols marred the walls, intricate and deliberate, their meaning unknown but their presence undeniable. Ji-hyun's breath hitched as she traced the outline of one with a trembling finger, the paint still slightly damp. The realization that she was not alone here, that someone or something had been in these corridors with her, sent a shiver down her spine. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional drip of water and the distant sound of something moving, something that shouldn't be there. Her heart raced as she considered her options: flee and abandon this place of potential inspiration, or stay and uncover the source of these symbols, risking whatever lurked in the shadows. The decision weighed heavily on her as the whispers began, faint at first, then growing in intensity, voices speaking in tongues she couldn't understand, coming from all directions at once. The air grew colder, her breath visible in the dim light, and the symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Ji-hyun's instincts screamed at her to run, but her curiosity anchored her feet to the ground. Then, just as suddenly as they had started, the whispers stopped, leaving behind a silence more terrifying than the voices. The symbols were glowing now, a faint, eerie light that illuminated the corridor ahead, revealing a figure standing at its end, its features obscured by the darkness. Ji-hyun's scream was swallowed by the factory's vast emptiness as the figure took a step forward, then another, its movements unnatural, disjointed. She turned to run, her flashlight casting wild shadows as she stumbled over debris, the figure's presence behind her palpable, its breath cold on the back of her neck. The exit seemed miles away, the factory's layout shifting, corridors elongating, doors appearing where there had been none. Just as she thought she couldn't run any further, Ji-hyun burst through the factory's main doors, the daylight blinding after the darkness within. She didn't stop running until she was blocks away, her heart pounding, her mind racing with questions. Had it been real, or had the factory's oppressive atmosphere played tricks on her senses? The symbols, the whispers, the figure, they couldn't have been real, could they? Yet, as she looked down at her hands, she saw the faint glow of paint from the symbols she had touched, a reminder that some mysteries are best left unsolved. The factory stood silent once more, its secrets kept, waiting for the next curious soul to wander its forgotten corridors. Break time equals fives, greater than the script begins with the night security guard, Mr. Kim, starting his shift at the derelict shopping mall in Seoul, South Korea. The mall, once bustling with life, now stands as a hollow shell of its former self, with its corridors echoing the silence of abandonment. Mr. Kim, a middle-aged man with a weary face, took this job out of necessity, but the loneliness of the night shifts weighs heavily on him. As he makes his rounds, the flickering fluorescent lights cast long shadows, making the empty storefronts look like gaping mouths. The air is thick with the smell of dust and decay, a constant reminder of the mall's forgotten state. Suddenly, the sound of children laughing and running echoes through the corridor. The laughter is carefree, a stark contrast to the oppressive silence. Mr. Kim's heart skips a beat. He knows the mall is supposed to be empty. Gripping his flashlight tightly, he follows the sound, his footsteps echoing ominously. The laughter leads him to the old playground area, now covered in a thick layer of dust. But there's no one there. The laughter stops as abruptly as it started, leaving Mr. Kim in silence. He checks every corner, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, but finds nothing. The incident leaves him unsettled, questioning whether he imagined it. The next night, it happens again. This time, the laughter is accompanied by the sound of tiny footsteps running past him. Mr. Kim turns quickly, but the corridor is empty. A cold draft brushes against his neck, sending shivers down his spine. He starts to document the occurrences, noting the times and locations, hoping to find a logical explanation. But the more he investigates, the more the phenomena escalate. Objects move on their own, shadowy figures dart just out of sight, and the laughter grows louder, more insistent. Mr. Kim's sanity begins to fray. He talks to the empty air, pleading for the phenomena to stop. One night, he discovers an old newspaper article about a tragic accident that occurred in the mall years ago. A group of children had disappeared without a trace. The realization hits him like a ton of bricks. The laughter, the running footsteps, they're not figments of his imagination. They're echoes of the past. The script reaches its climax as Mr. Kim, overwhelmed by fear and guilt for not being able to help the children, hears the laughter one final time. It's right behind him. He turns around slowly, his flashlight revealing nothing but the empty corridor. The laughter fades into the darkness, leaving him alone with his thoughts. The script ends ambiguously, with Mr. Kim resigning from his job, but the mall's corridors remain, holding their secrets. The final scene shows the mall at night, the sound of children laughing softly in the distance, suggesting that the phenomena continue, waiting for the next person to hear their whispers in the dark. Break time equals 5s, greater than the abandoned Love Motel on the outskirts of Daegu stood as a relic of forgotten passions, its neon sign long extinguished, leaving only the ghost of its former glow. The building, a maze of narrow hallways and dimly lit rooms, was a popular spot for urban explorers and thrill-seekers. Among them were Ji-hoon and Soo-min, a couple drawn to the motel by tales of its eerie ambience and the unexplained phenomena reported by previous visitors. Their curiosity was piqued, not by a belief in the supernatural, but by a desire to experience something beyond the mundane. As they stepped through the broken front door, the air inside was thick with the scent of mildew and decay, a stark contrast to the crisp autumn air outside. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath their feet. They moved slowly, their flashlight beams cutting through the darkness, revealing walls lined with peeling wallpaper and doors that hung awkwardly on their hinges. The further they ventured into the motel, the more the atmosphere seemed to shift. The temperature dropped noticeably, sending a shiver down Soo-min's spine. Ji-hoon, ever the skeptic, attributed it to the building's poor insulation. But then, as they turned a corner into one of the longer hallways, they both felt it, an invisible force, subtle at first, like a gentle push against their shoulders, urging them apart. They exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement of the odd sensation, but neither spoke of it, each dismissing it as imagination. The hallway seemed to stretch on endlessly, their footsteps echoing ominously. Then, the pushing grew stronger, more insistent. Sumin stumbled to the side, her shoulder brushing against the wall. "Did you feel that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ji-hoon nodded, his grip tightening around the flashlight. The beam flickered, casting shadows that seemed to move independently of their source. A whisper, too faint to decipher, seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The couple's hearts raced, their breaths shallow. The rational explanations they clung to were slipping away, replaced by a growing sense of dread. They reached for each other's hands, but the force between them was unrelenting, making it difficult to maintain contact. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of unintelligible voices that seemed to press in from all sides. Panic set in. They turned to leave, but the hallway behind them was no longer the one they had entered. The door at the end was now a dead end, a solid wall where none had been before. Their flashlights died simultaneously, plunging them into darkness. The whispers ceased, leaving a silence so profound it was deafening. In that moment, they realized they were not alone. Something was in the hallway with them, something that did not want them to leave together. The air grew colder, the presence between them becoming almost tangible. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the pressure lifted. The flashlights flickered back to life, revealing the hallway as it had been when they first entered. The door at the end was once again visible. Without a word, they ran, their footsteps echoing loudly as they fled the motel. Outside, under the pale light of the moon, they tried to rationalize what had happened. Perhaps it was a draft, or their minds playing tricks on them. But the look in each other's eyes told a different story. Something had happened in that hallway, something inexplicable. In the days that followed, the experience lingered between them like an unspoken secret. They found themselves questioning each other's movements, the space between them growing with each passing day. The whispers in the dark had sown seeds of doubt and paranoia, their relationship strained by an encounter with the unknown. The forgotten corridors of the Love Motel had claimed another victim, not in body, but in spirit. And as for the whispers? They would never speak of them again, but the memory would haunt them, a reminder of the night they ventured into the darkness and brought something back with them. Break time equals 5s, greater than the air in the Gwangju library was thick with a scent of old paper and dust, a testament to the years it had stood forgotten by the bustling city outside. The blogger, Minji, had come here on a whim, drawn by the whispers of the locals about the unexplained phenomena that occurred within its walls. Her camera was ready, her notebook open, but as the heavy door clicked shut behind her, a sudden chill ran down her spine. The library, bathed in the dim light of the setting sun filtering through the dusty windows, seemed to breathe around her. Minji's initial excitement quickly turned to unease as she realized the silence was absolute. No birds, no distant traffic, just the occasional creak of the old building settling. Then, the whispers started. Faint at first, they grew louder, overlapping in a language she couldn't understand. Her heart pounded as she turned to leave, only to find the door wouldn't budge. Panic set in as she pulled out her phone, no service. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if they were coming from all around her. Then, the pages. One by one, the books on the shelves began to open, their pages turning as if by invisible hands. Minji's breath came in short gasps as she backed into a corner, her camera forgotten on the floor. The pages turned faster, the whispers louder, until they were deafening. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The library was silent once more, the books closed, the whispers gone. But the door remained locked, and Minji was left with the chilling realization that she might not be alone in the library after all. The last thing she heard before the darkness took her was a single, faint whisper right beside her ear, saying her name. Break time equals 5s, greater than the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and rusted metal as the group of urban explorers ventured deeper into the abandoned military bunker buried beneath the hills of Korea. The flickering beams of their flashlights cast long shadows against the cold, concrete walls, revealing years of neglect and decay. Among them, June, the leader, was driven by a mix of curiosity and the thrill of uncovering secrets lost to time. His heart pounded with excitement, yet an undercurrent of unease gnawed at him, a primal instinct warning of unseen dangers lurking in the darkness. The bunker, a relic of a bygone era, was said to be haunted by the echoes of soldiers who never left, their spirits bound to the corridors they once patrolled. As they navigated the maze-like passages, the silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of their own cautious footsteps and the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. Then, it began, a faint but unmistakable sound of footsteps in unison, echoing from the darkness behind them. The group froze, their breath catching in their throats as they strained to listen. The footsteps were deliberate, matching their pace but always maintaining a distance. June's skin prickled with goosebumps as he turned his flashlight toward the source, only to illuminate an empty corridor stretching into the abyss. The others exchanged nervous glances, their earlier excitement replaced by a growing sense of dread. "Did you hear that?" Min whispered, her voice trembling. June nodded, trying to rationalize the phenomenon. "It's probably just the acoustics of this place playing tricks on us," he said, though his words lacked conviction. They pressed on, their movements now hesitant, their ears attuned to any sound. The synchronized footsteps continued, a relentless presence that seemed to mock their attempts to dismiss it. Each time they turned to confront the source, there was nothing there, only the oppressive silence and the cold, unyielding walls of the bunker. The psychological toll was mounting, their nerves frayed by the invisible pursuer. June's mind raced with possibilities. Was it the wind, an animal, or something far more sinister? The rational explanations were slipping away, replaced by a primal fear of the unknown. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, the exits they remembered now obscured by shadows. The air grew colder, their breath visible in the dim light, as if the bunker itself was breathing down their necks. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped, replaced by a whisper so faint it was almost imperceptible. It was a voice, or perhaps many voices, speaking in unison, the words indecipherable but laden with malice. The group huddled together, their flashlights flickering as if affected by an unseen force. June's hand shook as he reached for his camera, the lens capturing nothing but darkness, yet the whispers grew louder, enveloping them in a cacophony of despair. In a moment of sheer terror, the lights went out, plunging them into absolute darkness. The whispers ceased, leaving behind a silence so profound it was deafening. When the flashlights flickered back to life, the corridor ahead was different. The walls were lined with old photographs of soldiers, their eyes seemingly following the group's every move. The exit was nowhere in sight. The realization hit them: they were not alone, and the bunker had no intention of letting them leave. The script ends with the group's fate left ambiguous, their screams echoing into the darkness, swallowed by the forgotten corridors of Korea's past. The whispers in the dark remained, a chilling reminder of the unexplained phenomena that lurk in the shadows, waiting for the next group of explorers to dare enter their domain. Break time equals 5s, greater than the script begins with the traveler, Alex, arriving at a secluded campsite near a long-abandoned village in the Korean countryside. The air is thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and the only sounds are the distant calls of night birds and the rustling of leaves in the wind. Alex, seeking solitude and a break from the chaos of city life, sets up camp as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor. As night falls, the temperature drops, and a dense fog rolls in, enveloping the campsite in an eerie silence. Alex settles into their tent, the glow of their lantern the only light in the darkness. The first night passes without incident, but the next morning, Alex wakes to a chilling discovery. Their belongings, which they distinctly remember leaving scattered around the tent, are now arranged in a perfect circle around their sleeping bag. The items are placed with such precision that it sends a shiver down Alex's spine. Confused and slightly unnerved, Alex chalks it up to sleepwalking, though they have no history of such behavior. That evening, as Alex tries to sleep, they hear faint whispers carried on the wind. The voices are indistinct, murmuring in a language Alex doesn't understand, but the tone is unmistakably urgent. The whispers seem to come from all directions, growing louder and more insistent as the night progresses. Alex's heart races, their breath coming in short gasps as they clutch their sleeping bag, too afraid to move. The whispers stop as suddenly as they began, leaving Alex in a silence that feels even more oppressive. The next morning, the circle of belongings is there again, this time with a small, intricately carved wooden figure placed at the center. Alex picks it up, feeling an immediate sense of unease. The figure is cold to the touch, and the eyes seem to follow Alex as they move. That night, the whispers return, louder now, and Alex swears they can feel breath on the back of their neck. They spin around, but there's no one there. The air is thick with the scent of something decayed, and the temperature in the tent plummets. Alex's panic reaches a fever pitch as they realize they're not alone. The climax comes when Alex, driven by fear and desperation, decides to leave the campsite in the middle of the night. As they pack their belongings in haste, the whispers coalesce into a single, clear voice that whispers Alex's name. The voice is so close, so intimate, that Alex freezes, unable to move. The script ends with Alex standing in the dark, the wooden figure clutched tightly in their hand, the voice whispering again, this time with a hint of amusement. The screen fades to black as the whispers continue, leaving the audience with a sense of unresolved dread and the unsettling realization that whatever is in the forest with Alex, it's not done with them yet.